Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Oscars preview series of 2022. Can I get a round of applause?
Yeah, woo, yeah, okay, all right.
Thank you so much for our live studio audience for that wonderful, wonderful, wonderful cheer. Today, we're going to be talking about West Side Story, but first, I'm going to pass the mic to my main man, Titus Oldham.
West Side? We're here. We are more than halfway through this series. It's been a lot of fun, and I'm just really excited to get into the meat of it all. I feel like these first episodes, we've been talking about some of the, the ones that aren't necessarily up for best picture, like the favorites, I should say. They're not necessarily the favorites. I was looking at Vegas Insider on betting odds for West Side Story, and guess what? West Side Story is listed third best odds for this category.
Whoa.
Best picture, which we will get into whether or not we agree with that ranking amongst the 10 films that we will be going over in this series. There will be some strong opinions, so embrace your ears, man. So the other nominations for West Side Story include Actress in a Supporting Role from Ariana DeBose, Cinematography from Janusz Kaminski, Costume Design from Paul Tazewell, Directing, of course, Steven Spielberg, Production Design, Adam Stockhausen and Rena DeAngelo, and then Sound, a whole lot of people that they'll be listed on screen, so they'll get their credit, but I'm not going to list every single one of them.
It's a lot of people.
Yeah, so notable storylines going into the ceremony is the Actress in a Supporting Role nominee, Ariana, actually could make history if she wins, since the original Anita in the original West Side Story 1961 actually won that award back then. It was like I don't know, how long has it been now? Like 60 years? That's crazy. 60 years ago, that character's portrayal won an Oscar, and now it could win again 60 years later in this reprise, I guess you could call it. I would say that is a worthy nomination at the least. Definitely one of the more outstanding performances. Cinematography and directing, I mean, this duo has been known for a lot of different things, such as Saving Private Ryan and Schindler's List and Lincoln. They're always getting nominated. I think their last movie together, Kaminski and Spielberg, was Ready Player One, which I wasn't necessarily a fan of, but a lot of people did enjoy it, and it definitely had the same like stylistic approach as they typically do. And this is considered a blockbuster, but with like really, I don't know, like good film knowledge, I guess you could say. Like it's not like your copy paste MCU movie. If you're a fan of the Jurassic Parks, if you're a fan of Jaws, those type of blockbusters, then you'll be a fan of West Side Story for that technical approach at the least. Production design actually enlisted the help of the Wes Anderson production designers, at least since Moonrise Kingdom. They won for Grand Budapest Hotel, and they also did Isle of Dogs and the recent French Dispatch, which I didn't know going into it, but now, like in retrospect, it makes sense. Very saturated. Color was very important to this film, as far as like identifying characters as well, because the sharks were typically in warmer colors and the jets were typically in cooler colors, so they had to enlist the help of people who were really good with those palettes. And then sound, I guess that makes sense. It is a musical after all. It has to have good sound. Like, that's just a given, I guess you could say.
Comes with the genre.
So there you go. Kind of went through all of that. And then costume design, actually very important. They enlisted the help of a Tony Award-winning costume designer to kind of give the feel of that it's on a stage, it's theatrical.
Right.
It makes sense, if you're going to do a West Side Story, you're going to need some theatrical stage help. So
right. No, for sure. I definitely felt the costume design was one of the first things I think I noticed Also, along with the cinematography, that really stuck out to me. What you said about good film knowledge, yeah, I feel like that was very, very strong in this movie. There were a lot of long takes, a lot of dramatic camera movements that really gave this larger than life feel that I think really added to the fact that it is like kind of based off of a musical. So I think that was really strong. I loved the dresses. I think the America number was so visually stunning and beautiful, and a large part of that was just the costume design alone.
Yeah, I mean, I think fashion has a major impact on this to distinguish the characters, but also then there's the one number about I Feel So Pretty. She's cleaning up a gimbals, and all she can think about is like, oh, I want to be rich and I want to have this. And that is also kind of ties in the whole economical and socio-political themes in this movie. That is like the American dream, but also the fact that the American dream is very biased.
Right,
it's a very biased concept. It's racially biased, you could say. And so I liked those parts of the film a lot when it tied that in. I was like, this is very true, and like you could sympathize with both sides, like. Especially, I mean, at 50s, I guess, 50s, 40s. You can kind of sympathize with both sides because, like, obviously, it's not like all of the Puerto Ricans, like, really want to be there. I mean, you can kind of tell with the older brother. He's always talking about that. He's like, I want to return to Puerto Rico at some point.
Right.
And then all the Irish that at one point were... they had emigrated to America as well. Like, that was their territory. I mean, that opening shot with them taking down that one restaurant sign to reveal that used to be an Irish pub or whatever. That was very powerful to say, like, we were here before you. Like, I don't think it dodges the fact that they at one point were also immigrants.
Yeah.
Like, because you can always, like, bring that up and it's like, you were also immigrants. You can't be that, I don't know. You can't bring up the point that, like, we were born and raised here because at one point you're also immigrants. But at the same time, there's that territorial feel that was like, we already marked our territory before you. So, yeah. I think those themes as part of the narrative were stronger, especially stronger than, like, the romance. Listen, we'll get into this. I know Josh has some feelings about this. I will try to keep my part of it brief. I understand that when they're remaking a timeless piece of a stage work and the original was such a
classic.
It's such a classic. It was just such a kind of like a timestamp at the point of, like, musical film as well. It's considered one of the greatest musical films, the 1961 I guess version. It was just like so impactful to how musical film was approached thereafter. And so when you're trying to remake it, you can't really adjust the narrative of it. You just kind of have to build on the technical aspects of it, which I think those are the parts that they did mostly well. And especially since it's, adapted from Romeo and Juliet, like that, you have to keep those general plot lines going. You can't just drift away from it just because you want to do your own remake. You have to respect that. Otherwise, you're not going to get the respect in the box office and all that. So I understand why they had to go that route, but at the same time, I don't love the way they portray the romance regardless. I thought that was one of the weaker links of the narrative.
Yeah, especially because, I mean, the 1961 film has a distinct feel because of the time period it was made in. I feel like with the aesthetically, it fits the time that it was made in. But like with this one, it looks modern, it feels modern, and so I think there are expectations that come with that from the audience, and it was a little jarring to watch the film and see kind of the fantastical elements play out. And I mean, I don't know, because musical films, are hit or miss.
Yeah.
I want to say like hit or miss for the most part, just because it's a little hard. It's a little hard to take that from the stage to the screen
Mm-hmm.
and have it do its job just as well or even better. And even when we were watching it, like I brought up Glee, which is like I don't know if that's the best example.
Yeah, not
but
the pinnacle of musical
right.
video, I guess.
But just for the point being that, when Glee slips into, the musical leans into its more musical side and the characters do their numbers and whatnot, sometimes it is placed somewhat in reality with the characters performing on stage, but sometimes they really lean into the musical aspect and they create this sort of larger than life feeling where the characters like step into like their own inner world while they're delivering this number, and the environment is changing, the characters around them are changing, and all these different things are happening. And I like that aspect a lot more. I feel like musical film, when it leans into that, I think it starts to operate at its strongest. And that happened in West Side Story, but I don't know if it was the sound like we talked about or that the performances, because some of the American number again was so good, because I liked it, especially because I feel like they really leaned into the environment and they made it a spectacle. With the other numbers, it felt like it was just characters moving around
in a space in a very static space. I agree. And I also think that the sentimental value of those numbers ended up being more of a nuisance than a benefit for this film in some ways. If we're talking about that one scene in the police department.
Oh yeah, where they're like,
Mr.
Judge, please.
Kruk? What was his name?
I don't remember.
The police officer, whatever, chief of police. When they're talking about him, and they're talking about how, deep down they're no good, or if they are good.
Yeah.
Kind of weighing those two in relations to their upbringing and how it's like it's not their fault inherently. It's just the way they're raised.
Right.
All I need is a good, honest job, all that stuff. I think that number, I guess I've heard it's a fan favorite amongst like people who are a fan of the original West Side Story or the stage West Side Story. Apparently that is like one of the fan favorites because it is a change of pace. It's more comedic than a lot of the others.
Yeah.
But when you place it in the story, it's hard to remove because of how the sentimental value of it. When you kind of just like place it in the story and don't really connect it well with what preceded it and what came after, it's just like it feels like so out of place, I guess I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Like it didn't add any value. You had the chief of police already give his whole spiel at the intro about like how he feels about those gangs, and then in that scene when he like comes in and catches them, they just run out and he has no dialogue. He has nothing important to say, and like we get it. Like there's other ways to like show us that the police are kind of on the case about the fact that they're having their whole rumble. But like that whole interrogation sequence leading into that musical number and then them leaving and going to get the gun, it just feels like very like they just stuck it in there because they had to. Like, and I feel like with a blockbuster like this, I feel like Spielberg almost was kind of forced to make some sacrifices. I feel like the studio at least wanted more big names, so they had to get Ansel Elgort, which I don't think he did a great job. I don't think his performance lived up to any variation of this story, West Side Story, or even if you want to throw in all the Romeo and Juliet adaptations. I don't think his performance lives up to the standard of the Romeo archetype. I'm sorry. I honestly felt very out of the experience, I guess.
Yeah.
Like, anytime he was
yeah.
on screen, I'm like, this is Ansel Elgort trying.
Right.
Not, this is the character. I just felt, this is Ansel Elgort trying to be this character.
Right.
That's all I could think. Everyone else, I think, did a pretty good job. I really liked Riff, actually. I think he had a pretty powerful performance. I feel like all of the sharks did pretty well. Some of the other Jets were kind of laughable too.
Yeah.
I would say, Chief of Police. I don't know, whatever. Performances weren't exactly what this film was known for, anyways. But regardless, like, if you're gonna sell the narrative to us again after having already seen it, you have to elevate it beyond what we've already seen.
Yep.
And really sell it to us. Otherwise, we're just like, yeah, we've seen this.
Yeah.
You know? And I think the only one who really made me feel like I haven't seen this from this story was Ariana, and she rightfully has gotten her flowers for that.
Yeah.
So I guess it's just like, it's a disappointing like argument and debate that has like come up with like the 21st century films and blockbusters, is like your creative integrity as a filmmaker versus the studio's expectations. You know, that's always a thing that's going to play into it.
Right.
Which has gotten more favor towards the side of the independent filmmaker.
Yeah.
I would say,
Yeah.
especially compared to, I'm pretty sure when the original film was made, like there were a lot of studio control as far as the creative process went and the casting decisions, all that. But I still feel like, especially with this sort of blockbuster, the studio's gonna have a lot of control. And then the other argument and debate being, how do you go about adaptations? How far away from the original can you go,
right,
without making it so that you're just coming up with your own story? Like, how
right,
do you stay true to the original even if it's
core.
outdated? Because I really feel like a lot of the narrative, I mean, especially since it's adapted from Romeo and Juliet, is outdated, and you have to give it a kind of fresher feel.
Right.
But instead, they just kind of almost even like took away from the original like thought of why we're even putting in this young, immature romance in there, because there's not a lot of inner thought going on. Which, like, at least in Shakespearean telling, like, we get the inner dialogue because they do the asides and whatever.
Right.
But we don't get a lot of that aside from the musical numbers, and the musical numbers are tacky, so it's hard to take seriously.
Yep.
And so it's like, it just feels like they're jumping in a relationship and now they want to get married, but now he killed her brother and now she's like, okay, I forgive you, and now he died. Yeah. It's like, it kind of just rushes through it.
Yeah.
Instead of giving us the build-up. I feel like I didn't feel the build-up from that romance that really makes you want to see what happens to that romance.
Exactly.
See it blossom. There just wasn't no build-up. It was just like, they walk around the bleachers and like, oh shit, I'd fuck.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, that's all I felt like, you know? So yeah.
That's the thing. I feel like it was a little hard for me to get invested in that particular relationship, and that's kind of the core of the entire film or the entire story, because it's like, if you're building this whole world around the Romeo and Juliet cliche or the Romeo and Juliet archetype, you have to sell us on that point. And again, maybe it was probably the performances, particularly from Ansel Elgort. I feel I just did not believe him. I did not believe his character or his performance. It just felt off. Like, I don't even know how to describe it. It just didn't feel. It just wasn't enough. And I don't know. I think Rachel Zegler is the actor or the actress who plays.
Yeah.
I don't remember the name of the character. Like,
Are you talking about the older lady who?
No. That's Rita Moreno.
Oh,
but
right. Yeah.
She did a
good job. I forgot to mention
too.
her. Yeah.
She did a really good job.
Why do I recognize Renee? Like, I know that name, but
that's Renee Zellweger. But no.
Well, yeah, who is she?
No. She's not in this movie.
Oh.
Rachel Zegler, I think is the name of Maria, the actress who plays Maria, right? Am I wrong?
Okay, I'm not sure. Like,
I could be wrong. But I think she did it. She did a good job. She had an amazing voice. But yeah, that's an interesting line of thinking, because when it comes to adaptations, I mean, we look at like the film industry today, and it feels like a lot of what's being made is just remakes, things that they know will sell money, and studios must be behind that because they want a big payout.
Ghostbusters.
Right. But
Yeah, I feel like we see that a lot now.
yeah, and a lot of times, I think it is changing. I think artistic integrity is on the come up, one could say.
Auteur film with like Wes Anderson and I mean, who else? I guess you could say Tarantino embodies that. There are still filmmakers that embody the whole auteur theory. But man, as far as like studios go, they're just so powerful, because like, who doesn't want to work for a studio that can get you the cast you want, you know?
Right.
Like, only certain directors have the clout to remain independent and also get that cast. Like, what Wes Anderson's doing right now and his upcoming film,
right?
Like, I was just reading about it, is bound to have probably like the most expensive cast in recent history.
Wow.
Which will be crazy. Well, like on paper the most expensive, but like I'm not sure how. A lot of them probably would take a cheaper cut just to be in a Wes Anderson film.
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel like if you're not one of those directors, it's hard to remain independent. You got to kind of depend on the big studios as you're rising up in the ranks. And so that's what's so hard about it all, is like you can't make your first feature film entirely the way you want it if you want it to have the widest release.
I don't know. I think West Side Story deserves all of its nominations, but like you said, it's just
best picture. I don't know.
Yeah, best picture.
I mean, there's 10 nominees, so sure, throw it in. But when I looked at those odds and saw it was third, I was like, no way.
Right.
I do not agree. From what I've seen, I've already seen 7 of the 10, and I would say it's definitely not in my top 5 of those 7. So it's 6 or 7 in my book.
Yeah,
from those 7 I've seen.
And the story could be strong. The story is already strong, and there's a lot to expand upon, and those moments in the film are kind of the most powerful, especially in the climax. That one scene in the shop owner's store where
the assault.
Yeah.
That was strong, and it was pivotal as well.
Right.
Like, you knew why I was there. You knew why everyone was reacting the way they were reacting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Even Maria at the very end, when she's pointing the gun at the very climax at all the sharks.
I thought ended solid.
Yeah,
like, it was a solid ending.
Yeah. The ending landed. It was just the build up. Even the
Chino's whole character makes sense. You know, like there are parts of the narrative that make sense. Unfortunately, it's not like the meat of the narrative. And so they're just going to get overshadowed.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's a little hard because, like you said, the numbers are a little cheesy, so it's hard to immerse yourself in it. And even the dialogue between the characters is kind of, it's a little outdated, it's a little old-fashioned, so it's just, you have to work a lot harder to sell it.
And I think it did its job in introducing a whole new audience to this sort of musical film. And like, I guess Shakespearean adaptations, we don't get too many of those anymore. I mean, maybe we do, but I mean, it depends on who you ask. And then as far as like the people who had already loved the original West Side Story, like people who are really invested, like they got a good production out of it. You know, it lived up to the standard that the original set, I would say.
Yeah.
But if you're a moviegoer who isn't really in either crowd, like, you have already been kind of introduced to like the whole idea of like Shakespearean adaptation and like theater adaptation, and you're not exactly sold on the original West Side Story, if you're in that like intersection, then you're gonna kind of be disappointed, because that's the intersection that I was in.
Right. Yeah. I feel like I just wasn't the audience.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
What it comes down to.
Yeah.
But
all right. Is there anything else that you want to talk about?
I'm good, honestly.
You're set?
Yeah, I'm set. This is the end.
I guess this is the end.
Oh my god.
Oh my god. Wow. Thanks guys for joining and like sticking around. We always appreciate that. Shout out to Venus Williams for liking our Instagram post.
Thank you.
If you're here again, like, we don't deserve you.
Right. What a shocker.
You're better than Serena. What?
Oh.
Who said that?
We gotta cut there. We gotta cut there.